I didn't cry when she slapped me in the parking lot on Thanksgiving. I was busy recording. When the garage door slammed shut, the smell of paint and dust couldn't cover the harsh perfume on my coat. They thought the dark would silence me. They didn't realize how long their shadows would stretch when the lights finally came on. My name is Adeline Lara. I am 32 years old, and tonight I am failing to get into my father's house. The Orchard House isn't just a villa, it's a statement. Here in Riverton, Texas, it's the Lara legacy, built on timber and polished stone. Things I understand. I design spaces. I build furniture. I make things fit together. But I have never fit in here. The Thanksgiving dinner was predictable. The clinking of crystal, the smell of burnt sugar and expensive wine, the low murmur of Riverton society pretending they are not judging each other. I drove back from the main house to the guest wing, which is really just the original farmhouse my grandfather built, where my father insists I stay. The air is cold, biting through my thin coat. The gravel crunches under my boots. I just want to get inside, away from the night. She was waiting for me. Lorraine Vale Lara, my stepmother. She blocked the driveway, illuminated by the harsh white of the security light, her silhouette sharp against the painted brick. She looks like she is carved from ice, and she is just as cold. "How dare you?" she hissed. The words cut the quiet. I stopped, my hand on my car door. "Lorraine, it is late." "You embarrassed me, in my own home, in front of my guests." I knew what this was about. The polite question I had asked Mr. Henderson from the bank. I just asked about the Sunrise Hearth Fund's audit schedule. "Lorraine, it is a community charity. People are allowed to ask questions." "You insinuated." She stepped closer, the scent of her perfume, that heavy, cloying gardenia, washing over me. "You tried to tarnish my honor, my work. You made me look like a fool." Her work, the charity she ran, the one that seemed to host more galas than it served hot meals. A second shadow detached itself from the porch. Dylan, her son, my stepbrother. He already had his phone up, the red light of the camera glowing in the dark. A smirk played on his lips. "Having trouble? Mom? Looks like Addie is trying to start drama again." He was goading me. He always goads me. They want a reaction. They want the unstable artist's daughter to scream, to break something, to prove their narrative. My heart hammered against my ribs, a short, sharp rhythm. Thump, 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 thump. I kept my hands visible, relaxed at my sides, but with my left hand, I double-tapped the crown of my smartwatch. The screen flickered once, confirming. Audio and video recording. Active. The lens is tiny, hidden in the bezel. They just see a watch face. They do not see the witness. "Put the phone down, Dylan," I said, my voice steady. "Or what?" Lorraine sneered. "You will throw another fit? Ruin another holiday?" "I just want to go to bed." "You do not get to decide when this is over." She moved faster than I expected. The slap was not a movie slap. It was a hard, stinging crack of palm against skin. My head snapped to the side, my ear ringing instantly. The shock of it was cold, sharp. Then came the shove. She pushed me hard, 2 hands against my chest. I stumbled back, my heel catching on the uneven gravel. "Lorraine." My father. Victor Lara. He stood on the top step of the porch, frozen. He looked small in his expensive cashmere sweater, his face a mask of discomfort. Caught between his wife and his daughter, he looked at me, then at her. He did not move. He said nothing else. His silence was the second assault. Dylan's phone remained steady, capturing it all. "You are ungrateful," Lorraine spat, her face contorted. "After everything we have done for you." She grabbed my arm, her nails dug into my coat. She was not dragging me toward the house. She was dragging me toward the auxiliary garage, the detached shed where they keep the lawnmower, the old paint cans, the things they do not want to look at. "Lorraine, stop. Let go of me." My father just stood there, paralyzed. Dylan followed, still filming, narrating. "Mom is just teaching her a lesson. Addie needs to learn respect." Lorraine shoved me again, I tripped over the threshold and fell onto the concrete floor. The smell of dust and old oil filled my nose. "Sleep in here tonight," she snarled from the doorway. "Maybe the cold will teach you some manners." The world went black as the heavy metal rolling door slammed down. The sound was deafening, a final, metallic crash. Then, silence. Just the faint sound of their laughter fading as they walked back to the warm house. I stayed on the floor for a long time. The concrete was freezing, seeping through my jeans. My cheek throbbed. Slowly, I sat up. The darkness was total. I could not see my own hands. My first instinct was the watch. I shielded the screen with my body, cupping my hand over it as the display lit up. The red recording icon was still active. 47 minutes of runtime saved. Battery, 82%. Good. I touched my cheek. It was tender, swelling, but the skin was not broken. I rotated my wrist, checked my elbow where I landed. Bruised. Everything would be bruised, but nothing was broken. Not physically. The humiliation was a physical thing. It settled in my chest, a block of ice. It was not hot rage. It was cold. It was the Arctic cold of realization. They did not just lock me out. They discarded me. They threw me away in the trash shed while they slept in their 1,000 thread-count sheets. My father let it happen. He watched. I would not be discarded. I pulled my knees to my chest, trying to preserve warmth. The smell of metal dust and mildew was thick. I whispered it into the dark, a promise to the spiders in the cold air. I will not leave empty-handed. I pulled out my phone. The signal was 1 bar, flickering. A new message notification glowed on the screen. It was from Sarah Jenkins, the project lead for Midstone Lofts, my biggest contract, the one that was supposed to get my business through the next 2 quarters. "Hey, Adeline, we need to pump the brakes. Heard some unsettling rumors about instability. Let us postpone the design review until after the new year. Hope you understand." Unsettling rumors? Instability? My stomach dropped. Dylan. It had to be Dylan. He had been posting about me for weeks. Subtle digs on the Riverton community forums. Now he had new footage. Lorraine had not just locked me in a garage. She was locking me out of my life, my career. The cold was starting to hurt. I needed to move, to find warmth. I used my phone's flashlight. The beam cut through the black. Old furniture covered in drop cloths, rusted tools, bags of fertilizer. And the smell, it was gasoline, sharp and pungent, coming from a red canister in the corner. Next to it was a large, battered metal tool chest. I fumbled with the latch. Inside, greasy rags, wrenches, and thank God, an old battery-powered flashlight. It clicked on, weak but steady. I found a folded, moth-eaten wool blanket stuffed in a corner. It smelled like mildew, but it was cover. As I pulled it out, I knocked something over. A metal box, not a toolbox, a file box, black, standard size, with a cheap combination lock on the front. A faded label was taped to the lid. House files. House files. Why lock this? Why keep it in the garage? My heart started that fast rhythm again. I did not have the combination. I did not need it. I rummaged through the toolbox. I found a heavy-duty set of pliers. I jammed the tip into the flimsy locking mechanism. I put all my weight into it, twisting, leveraging the metal against itself. The lock snapped. The sound was loud in the small space. I paused, listened. Nothing but the wind outside. I lifted the lid. It was packed with file folders. Not house blueprints, not warranties. Tax documents. Folder after folder. Labeled, Sunrise Hearth Charity. I pulled one out. Form 990. The official IRS filing for a nonprofit. I flipped to the signature page. Lorraine Vale Lara, President. My hands were shaking, partly from cold, partly from adrenaline. I dug deeper. Bank statements, expense reports. A different folder was labeled Consulting. I opened it. Invoices, dozens of them, all paid by Sunrise Hearth. The recipient, Vale Strategic, LLC. The fee, Strategic Consulting, $10,000, $20,000, $15,000, over and over. The address for Vale Strategic was not an office building. It was a post office box number. I knew that number. I had mailed Dylan's birthday cards there for 3 years before I gave up. It was his. Lorraine was funneling charity money, tax-exempt money, directly to her son through a shell company for services that did not exist. I felt sick. This was it. This was the dark spot I had poked at during dinner. This was why she hit me. I could not take the box. They would know. I pulled out my phone. Battery, 64%. I propped the flashlight up, balancing it on a stack of paint cans. I spread the first document on the dusty floor. I smoothed it flat. My hands trembled, but I held the phone steady. Click. I photographed the signature page. Click. I photographed the Vale Strategic invoice. Click. The bank statement showing the transfer. Page after page, tax returns, incorporation papers for Vale Strategic, listing Dylan as the sole proprietor, memos. I worked fast, the only sound the click of the phone's camera and my own breathing, visible in the cold air. I opened my secure cloud drive. I created a new, encrypted folder. I named it Orchard Nov 27, Orchard, November 27th. I watched the upload progress bar creep across the screen. 1 file, 2 files, 10. I sat there in the dark, surrounded by the smell of gasoline and mildew, my cheeks swelling, my career dangling by a thread. But the ice in my chest was not just humiliation anymore. It was fuel. I put every document back exactly as I found it. I restuffed the blanket. I left the broken lock on the floor next to the box. They would know I was in here. They would not know what I left with. I huddled in the blanket, the cold concrete biting into my bones, and I waited for the dawn. The sky was a flat, bruised gray when I found the manual release latch. It felt like yielding to a tomb. The heavy garage door protested, a metal screech that split the pre-dawn stillness, a sound that felt loud enough to wake the dead, or at least the residents of the main house. I did not care. I forced it up just high enough to slide underneath. Scraping my back on the oily track, I emerged into the biting air, a ghost leaving her crypt. I did not look back at the warm lights of the orchard house. I walked to my car, my boots crunching a rhythm on the gravel. Each step was deliberate. My cheek was a tight mask. The skin pulled taut over the swelling. My jaw ached. I smelled of mildew, gasoline, and the metallic tang of old paint. Before I opened my car door, I paused. I looked at the handle to the garage's side door, the one they lock from the outside, the one I was supposed to wait by. I pressed my right palm flat against the clean white paint, leaving a perfect, ghostly handprint in the layer of grime and dust I had collected on the floor. A timestamp, a small, silent declaration. I was here. My studio at Forge Row is my real home. It is not a house. It is a statement of intent, a converted 19th century ironworks. It is all exposed brick, towering steel beams, and the clean, sharp scents of sawdust, welding flux, and tung oil. It is a place where things are built, not just displayed. I locked the heavy steel door, threw the industrial deadbolt, and leaned against it. The cold metal a comfort. I was finally safe. The first hour was pure, mechanical triage. I plugged in the smartwatch. I plugged in my phone. I stripped off the clothes I was wearing, the coat still holding her gardenia perfume, the jeans damp from the concrete, and sealed them in a plastic trash bag. Evidence. I showered until the smell of the garage was gone, the water hot enough to sting. Watching the drain circle with grime I did not recognize, I backed everything up. The cloud files from Orchard Nov 27 were downloaded to a local encrypted solid-state drive. That drive was then cloned to a secondary backup, which I placed in my small fireproof safe. Redundancy was the only religion I practiced. The video file from the watch was stable. I put on headphones and listened. The audio was terrifyingly clean. The wind, the gravel, Lorraine's voice, thick with contempt. You tried to tarnish my honor. The sharp, percussive crack of the slap. A sound so violent it made me flinch even now. My own sharp intake of breath. My father's weak, useless. Lorraine and Dylan, the director. Got it. Perfect. I stared at my reflection in the dark glass of the monitor. The bruise was blooming. A dark, ugly purple shadow spreading from my cheekbone down toward my jaw. It was the color of a betrayal. I brewed a full pot of coffee, the kind that feels like viscosity. I sat at my drafting table, the laptop open, the 60-inch wall-mounted monitor glowing. This was my real workspace. On the left monitor, I tiled the photographs from the file box. On the right, a fresh spreadsheet. I am a designer. I understand systems. This was just a new kind of system to map. Column A, date. Column B, payee. Column C, amount. Column D, source. Column E, notes. I began the transfer. It was a meditation. Veil strategic, veil strategic, veil strategic. The numbers were insultingly round. $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. Not $10,015.32, just 10. They were not even trying to create the illusion of a legitimate invoice. They were just taking. The tax forms listed Sunrise Hearth's initial endowment source, not just small community donations, a massive seed payment of $250,000 from the Victor Lara Trust, my trust, the trust my mother set up for me before she died, the one my father jointly managed. He was the patron. He was funding the very slush fund that was paying his stepson. The realization felt like swallowing glass. He was not just a passive observer of my humiliation. He was the bank, unwitting, perhaps, but the negligence was so profound it felt like intent. I ran my own name through the county property database, a nervous tic I developed after Lorraine moved in. Nothing new, but the search triggered a memory. The other file in that box, the one marked House Admin, which I had ignored in favor of the obvious tax fraud. I pulled up the photos. It was not administration. It was a partially completed application, a home equity line of credit. On the Orchard House, the property was in my father's name, but the applicant listed. It was me, Adeline Lara, my name, my social security number, correct to the last digit, my birth date. They were trying to leverage the house, and they were using me as the legal vehicle. The signature on the bottom was a clumsy, looping imitation of my own, the kind someone would forge from looking at the back of a credit card. The application was marked, pending final review, not yet dispersed. They had hit a snag. Maybe my credit was not clean enough. Maybe they needed one more document, but they had tried. This escalated past family drama, past embezzlement. This was a felony. This was identity theft. The consulting fees to Dylan were sloppy, but the bigger payments, the ones that drained the account, were disguised. Sunrise Hearth paid enormous event fees for its fundraisers. I cross-referenced the primary vendor, Bluefin Events, LLC. A quick search of the Texas State Business Registry showed the owner, not Lorraine, not Dylan, a holding company registered in Delaware, anonymous, but the registered agent's address. It was the same attorney who filed Lorraine's prenuptial agreement with my father, the one that famously protected all her assets. It was her. She was paying herself hundreds of thousands of dollars to host her own galas, using my father's money to do it. My phone buzzed on the table, a notification from the Riverton Community Forum. Dylan had posted. It was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive violence, a long, vague post about praying for certain family members who were struggling with instability and making damaging accusations during the holidays. He mentioned volatile behavior and a desperate need for attention. He ended with, "We just want her to get the help she needs." The comments exploded instantly. So sad. She always seemed so high-strung. I always knew she was difficult, that artist type. Thoughts and prayers for Lorraine. She is such a saint. Her charity work is a blessing. My phone buzzed again. An email. Sarah Jenkins from Midstone Lofts. The subject line was checking in. My stomach dropped. I read the message I already knew was coming. Heard some unsettling rumors. Instability. Need to postpone. Then another. The commission for the downtown bistro. Cancelled. The consultation for the library annex. Postponed indefinitely. My instability was now public record. My livelihood was evaporating. I went back to my monitor. I opened a new document. I needed a timeline, a chain of causation. 7 p.m. Dinner. Polite questions about the fund. 10:30 p.m. Confrontation in the driveway. 10:35 p.m. The assault. The clear audio of the slap. 10:36 p.m. Imprisonment in the garage. Lorraine's voice. Sleep in here. Teach you manners. Dylan's voice. Got it. Perfect. 1:15 a.m. Discovery of the house files. 4 a.m. Discovery of the fraudulent HELOC application. 9 a.m. Dylan's public smear campaign begins. 9:30 a.m. Client cancellations. This was not a family dispute. It was retaliation. They assaulted me, imprisoned me, and when they realized I might have found something, they launched a preemptive strike against my livelihood. I needed a lawyer, not one of my father's slick corporate monsters. I needed Marla Pike. Her office was small, above the bakery. Her reputation was huge. She fought slumlords. She fought predatory lenders. She fought for the community, and she hated public corruption. I sent her an email. Subject: Pro bono inquiry. Public charity fraud and identity theft. I attached the timeline and the audio file. Then, defense. I logged into my bank. Riverton Mutual. I placed a full security freeze on all 3 of my credit bureaus. I changed every password I had. I filed a fraud alert with the bank, specifically flagging the HELOC application and noting the forgery. I stood at my window, looking down at the street, the garage, the driveway. They had cameras, but they were Lorraine's. I needed an outside view. Who could see that driveway? I zoomed in on a satellite map. The house across the street. I knew who lived there. Eddie Holm. He runs a plumbing business. A quiet guy. Divorced. Keeps to himself. His work van, a big white Ford, was always parked on the street, facing the houses, facing the Orchard House driveway, facing the garage. My hands were shaking. I found his business number and called. Holm Plumbing. Eddie? It's Adeline Lara, from across the street. A pause. Hey, Adeline, rough night? My blood went cold. What do you mean? I was up late working on invoices, saw the show, your car pulling up, the yelling, looked intense. Your stepmom has a temper. Eddie, your van, the one you park on the street, was it there last night? Always is. Why? Does it have a dash cam? Another pause. Longer this time. He was doing the math. It does. Records on motion. But it's sensitive. It was windy. Probably recorded all night. The files overwrite every 48 hours. I need that recording. Eddie. Adeline, I do not want trouble. The Laras. Your family. They are powerful. Lorraine is all over the charity boards. They are criminals. Eddie, last night, they assaulted me and locked me in that garage for hours, and they are trying to ruin me. All I need is the timestamp, 10:30 to 11 p.m. Just to prove I was there, that I was locked in. I will check the files, he said, and hung up. My phone rang, an unknown number. This is Marla Pike. I listened to your file. I read your timeline. Can you be at my office in 10 minutes? Marla's office smelled like old books and strong coffee. She was small, sharp, and wore a practical wool blazer. She did not waste time on pleasantries. She had my timeline printed out, already covered in red ink. This, she said, tapping the printout of the Vail strategic invoice, is embezzlement. This, tapping the HELOC application, is felony identity theft. And this, she tapped her speaker, indicating my audio file, is assault. The smear campaign is libel per se. They did not just attack you, they attacked your profession. So we go public? I asked, my voice eager. We show them the video? We show them the files? Marla held up a hand. No, not yet. You never fire your biggest weapon first. But they are destroying my business right now. Midstone Loft's canceled. That was half my year. They are sloppy, Marla said, her eyes intense. They are arrogant. They hit you because they were angry. They are slandering you because they are scared. But they are not scared enough. Right now, this is a family dispute. We need to make it an ironclad criminal case before we show our hand. They think you are a volatile artist. Good. Let them think it. While they are busy calling you crazy, you and I are going to conduct a very quiet, very cold audit. Public silence. Gather more. We wait. We build the case. And then, we do not detonate a grenade. We detonate a bomb. His voice on the phone was thin, a reedy sound that barely resembled the booming patriarch I remembered. Adeline, we need to talk. This has gone too far. I waited. The silence stretched, filled only by the hum of my belt sander in the background. Please, he said, let's just talk, like adults. I turned the sander off. Penny Kiln Cafe, 10 a.m., come alone. I hung up before he could argue. I would not go back to that house. I would not meet him on his territory, or hers. The Penny Kiln was neutral, public, and smelled like burnt coffee beans. It was perfect. I arrived at 9:45. I chose a booth in the back, my back to the wall, a clear view of the entire cafe and the front door. I ordered a black coffee and waited. He was late, at 10:03. He pushed through the door, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. His expensive wool coat seemed to hang on his frame, and his eyes were puffy, edged in red. He looked like a man who had not slept. He slid into the booth, the vinyl sighing under his weight. He did not look at me. He looked at the sugar packets. She's very passionate about her charity work. Addie, you know that. He was starting with a defense of her, not an apology to me. My resolve hardened, the ice from the garage floor reforming in my veins. She told me, he continued, his voice barely a whisper, that the fund was for warm meals for winter. That is what she called it. She would bring me papers to sign. At dinner. Sometimes. I was busy. I trusted her. A man is supposed to trust his wife. He was a fool, a willing, negligent fool. He was asking for absolution, for me to say I understood. I said nothing. Instead, I reached into my satchel and pulled out 2 sheets of paper. Not the originals, never the originals, just clean copies. I slid them across the worn laminate table, pushing them past the salt shaker. This, I said, my voice low and flat. I tapped the first page. Is an invoice, a $20,000 consulting fee paid by the Warm Meals Fund. He squinted, picking it up. It was paid to Vale Strategic, I continued, which, you will note, is registered to Dylan's post office box. He helps her with marketing. You said... My father's face went slack. 20,000 for marketing? He was still trying to rationalize it. He was looking for a foothold of denial. I pushed the second page toward him. And this is a home equity line of credit application for the Orchard House. We do not need a line of credit, he said automatically, his brows furrowing. It was not in your name, it was in mine. He looked confused. What? They used my social security number, my birth date. I let my voice drop. And my signature. He picked up the second page. He stared at the application. He stared at the clumsy, looping forgery of Adeline Lara at the bottom. His breath hitched. This, he understood. This was not a rounding error. This was not a passionate wife getting carried away with charity. This was a violation. His hand, the one holding the paper, began to shake. She would not, he whispered, but his eyes were locked on my name. This is not your Adeline. The bell on the cafe door chimed, a bright, happy sound that sliced through the tension. The scent of gardenia and entitlement hit me before I even looked up. "Victor, what is this?" Lorraine. She was standing at the end of our table, Dylan hovering behind her like a poorly dressed shadow. Her face was a mask of curated outrage. She had not come to talk. She had come to attack. "I knew it," she announced, her voice rising, loud enough for the tables nearby to turn and look. "I told you she would try this." She pointed a perfectly maniciled finger at me, then at the papers on the table. "She is trying to extort you, Victor, showing you faked documents, telling you lies, trying to poison you against me, after all I have done for this family." Dylan crossed his arms, smirking. "How much does she want? Mom? Is that what this is? Addie? A little shakedown? Trying to get some cash because your little wood shop is failing?" My father looked trapped, his eyes wide, darting between me and his wife. "Lorraine, there is a signature." "It is a setup," Lorraine snapped. I did not look at her. I did not look at Dylan. I kept my eyes locked on my father's. He was the only one who mattered. "You asked what happened." "Dad," I said, my voice quiet, cutting through her performance. "This is what happened." I took my phone out of my pocket. I pressed the play button on the video file from Thanksgiving night. I set the phone flat on the table, the screen facing up. The audio was clear, the wind, the gravel. My voice, "Lorraine, stop, let go of me." Lorraine's voice, "You are ungrateful. You embarrassed me." And then, the sound, the sharp, wet crack of the slap. It echoed in the quiet cafe. A woman at the next table audibly gasped. My father flinched as if he had been struck himself, his eyes squeezing shut. Lorraine laughed. It was a short, ugly barking sound. A disciplinary slap. She was hysterical, out of control. I did what any mother would do to calm her down. I slowly turned my head, allowing the weak morning light from the cafe window to fully illuminate my face. The bruise was no longer just purple. It was a mottled, sickening bloom of green and yellow. "I am 32 years old," I said. The words hung in the air. The barista had stopped wiping the counter. The man reading the newspaper had lowered it. The entire cafe was watching. Lorraine's smile faltered. Dylan, arrogant and clumsy, tried to regain control. "She deserved it. She was accusing us of stealing. All those payments were legitimate. Every invoice, the Bluefen invoices, all of it." My father's head snapped toward Dylan, his eyes, blurry with shame, suddenly focused. "Blue what? What is Bluefen?" Lorraine's face went white. Dylan had made a mistake. He had named the second shell company, the one I had not even shown my father yet. She grabbed Victor's arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. "We are leaving. Now. Victor, get up." "But, Lorraine," he stammered. "Bluefen, what is that?" "We will discuss this at home," she hissed. "We will handle this internally, as a family." She was pulling him physically, dragging him from the booth. He stumbled, disoriented, a puppet on her strings. As she pulled him past me, he looked back. His face was a wreck of terror, confusion, and a lifetime of cowardice. I spoke to his back. "I am handling it legally." Lorraine yanked him toward the door. As he turned, he let his hand swing down, brushing against mine, which was still resting on the table. It was fast, a clumsy, desperate press of cold metal into my palm. I closed my fist around it. I did not look down. They left. The bell on the door chimed, and they were gone. I sat there for a long time, the silence of the cafe slowly returning to a normal murmur. I finished my coffee. It was cold. I opened my hand. A key, small, brass, stamped with a number. I knew it instantly. It was the key to the family's safe deposit box at Riverton Mutual. It was not forgiveness. It was not courage. It was a plea. He was a coward, and he was asking me, the daughter he had watched be assaulted, to go to war for him. That night, the anonymous messages began. A text from a burner number. "You look good in purple. Back off." An email from a scrambled address. "We know where you live. Stop digging. I sent the screenshots to Marla. By noon the next day, she had a judge sign a temporary restraining order, barring both Lorraine and Dylan from contacting me or coming within 500 feet of my studio. 2 days later, an email from Eddie Holm. Got it. The file is huge, but I isolated the timestamp you wanted. 10:36 p.m. You can hear a door slam. A big one, like a garage. Sounds like it's being forced down. I'm sending the notarized audio file to your lawyer. The cage was real. The timeline was locked. And now, I had a key. The legal machine. Once started. Moves with a cold, impersonal speed. Marla was in her element. She filed the temporary protective order before lunch. By 3 p.m., she had dispatched formal litigation hold notices via courier and certified mail to the registered addresses of Sunrise Hearth, Vale Strategic, and Bluefen Events. It was a digital, hands-off. They were now legally obligated to preserve every email, every text, every server log, every shred of paper. Deleting anything now would be a crime in itself. This, Marla explained, holding up a copy of the notice, is the digital fence. We have just told them we know they have something to hide and that we are coming for it. The next morning, I walked into the downtown branch of Riverton Mutual with my father's key in my pocket. The vault was cold, smelling of old paper and refrigerated air. The attendant, a woman with steel gray hair, checked my ID against the access list. My name was still there, a relic from a time before Lorraine. She unlocked the dual lock mechanism, inserted my key, and turned it. A heavy, polished steel door clicked open. She slid out the box, number 312, and left me alone in the small, soundproof viewing room. The box was heavier than I expected. On top were the expected items: my mother's jewelry, my grandfather's watch, old savings bonds in my name. Beneath them, tucked in a manila envelope, were the ledgers. They were not duplicates. They were the originals, hardbound, green covers, the kind my father always preferred. He was an analog man in a digital world, and for the first time, I was grateful for it. Lorraine's digital fraud was sloppy, but she had to report her successes to my father in a format he trusted. I sat there for 2 hours. The only sound, the rustle of thick paper. This was the missing piece. This was not just Lorraine siphoning money from my father's trust. This was bigger. The ledgers detailed massive inflows, 6-figure transfers, coming from the Riverton Community Fund, the largest, most respected public endowment in the county. My father sat on their board. He had leveraged his position to direct community money into Lorraine's Warm Meals Fund. Then, the second half of the equation, the outflows, the money did not stay. It sat in the Sunrise Hearth account for less than 72 hours before being dispersed. Not to Vale Strategic. That was Dylan's small-time grift. The big money went to Bluefen Events, page after page of event logistics, community outreach planning, winterbox procurement. It was a waterfall of stolen public money, laundered through my father's trust, cleaned by a fake charity, and pumped directly into Lorraine's hidden corporation. The warm meals were a phantom, a paper-thin justification to unlock hundreds of thousands of dollars in public funds. The world outside the small room felt distant. I had come in here looking for evidence of a family betrayal. I was walking out with proof of a conspiracy to defraud the entire city. My phone rang as I was driving back to the studio. It was the Callaways, my third and last major client. "Adeline, we are so sorry," Mr. Callaway said, his voice full of genuine regret. "We love your designs for the den, but we were at a dinner last night. We heard some things about your family, about a legal dispute. We just cannot be in the middle of that." The line went dead. I pulled over to the side of the road. I checked my bank account. The Callaway deposit was supposed to hit this week. Without it, I had enough to cover my studio rent for 1 more month. After that, nothing. I was financially ruined. My laptop pinged 2 days later, an email, not to me, but forwarded from a new, anonymous account Marla had set up for tips. The sender was simply D, the subject, Offer. The message was short, written in Dylan's arrogant, semi-literate style. This has gone too far. You're hurting your father. Stop this. We will give you $50,000 and you sign an agreement. You say you were confused. You keep quiet. This is the only offer. $50,000. It was enough to save my business. It was enough to live on for a year. It was also an admission of guilt. They were trying to buy my silence. I wrote one word and sent it to Marla to forward. No. I needed to work. I could not fight them if I was homeless. I spent the next 4 hours pulling together my portfolio. The city of Riverton was commissioning a large-scale public art piece for the New Commons Plaza. The Found Timber Pavilion. It was a major project, the kind that could redefine a career. It was also due in 3 days. I poured every ounce of desperation I had into the proposal, designing a structure from reclaimed wood, a space that spoke of strength and transparency. I hit send and prayed. The counterattack came the next day. Lorraine had hired a professional, a Riverton PR firm known for managing difficult family situations, which was code for smearing people. A sponsored article appeared in the online edition of the Riverton Ledger. Lara family heartbreak, daughter's lawsuit alleges. The story was careful, full of allegedly and sources close to the family. It painted me as a bitter, failed artist, ungrateful for her father's generosity, launching a frivolous and hurtful lawsuit to gain control of assets. By noon, the local hashtag was trending. Riverton disrespect. People I had known my whole life were commenting. Always knew she was unstable. Just after the money. Shame on her. Lorraine is a saint. The walls were closing in. I was a pariah in my own town. Then, Marla got the email. It came from a secure Proton mail account. The sender was Juniper. I am a financial manager at Bluefin Events. The email began. I cannot say more. What you are looking for is the HELOC bait plan. They needed a second guarantor. Lorraine tried to use Mr. Lara's financials, but the bank flagged his debt-to-income ratio. The plan was to use Ms. Lara's forged signature as a secondary applicant, using her personal assets as collateral without her knowledge. They were going to bait the bank with her clean credit to get the loan approved, then drain the $300,000 and leave her holding the debt. They were angry when you filed the fraud alert. It put the account on hold. Marla was ecstatic. This is our whistleblower. Juniper just handed us intent. The bank confirmed it the next day. An appraisal on the Orchard House had indeed been scheduled. It was now indefinitely postponed due to an active legal dispute. It was real. They were days away from succeeding. My father was a ghost. His phone went straight to voicemail. He was not at the house. He was not at his club. For 48 hours, he was simply gone. Then, a call came into Marla's office. Not from Victor, but from a junior associate at the accounting firm that managed the Riverton Community Fund. This is off the record, the associate whispered, but Victor Lara has been in our main conference room for 2 days. He invoked his right as a board member to an emergency audit. He is here with his own independent auditor, and they are going through every single transfer Sunrise Hearth ever received. He looks like he has seen a ghost. He was finally looking. Lorraine's lawyer sent the official letter, a cease and desist, threatening a massive defamation lawsuit for my malicious and false statements. I brought the letter to Marla, my hands shaking. Can they? Can they sue me for this? Marla Pike smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator that just saw its prey step into a trap. Oh, I hope they do, she said, her voice full of sudden, sharp joy. Please, God, let them sue us. Why? How is that good? Because, Adeline, she said, tapping the letter, right now, we are the ones suing. We have to ask for everything. But if they sue us for defamation, they are claiming that what we are saying is false. To prove it, they have to open their books, all of them. They cannot claim privacy. They are opening the door. They just handed us the keys to their entire kingdom. This is not a threat. This is a gift. The warning came that evening. It was small, Petty. I came out of my studio after midnight, exhausted. I walked to my car. All 4 tires were flat, not slashed. Someone had simply, methodically, unscrewed the caps from all 4 valves and let the air hiss out. It was a message. We can get to you. We can inconvenience you. We can stop you. I called Eddie home. He came over with an air compressor, his face grim in the streetlight. This is not good. Addie, this is a message. I know, I said. The next day, I took the 64% of the money I had left and bought a commercial-grade, fireproof safe. I put the original ledgers, the plastic bag with my clothes from Thanksgiving, and the backup hard drives inside. I spent that night taping the copies to my studio wall, the invoices, the bank statements, the flowcharts Marla and I had drawn, showing the money moving from the community fund to Sunrise Hearth, to Blue Fen, to Dylan. I drew a line from Lorraine to Dylan, a line from Lorraine to my father. I connected all of them. My design studio no longer looked like a workshop. It looked like a war room. The walls were covered in paper, a map of their greed. My hands were not made for sitting still. With my commissions gone, all my nervous, frantic, cold energy had to go somewhere. I threw it into the found timber pavilion. I was working with reclaimed longleaf pine, massive beams salvaged from a 19th century textile mill, wood that had already lived one life. But for the structural tests, the small mock-ups, I used something else. I had a small stack of oak boards in the back of my studio, salvaged years ago during a kitchen renovation at the Orchard House, before Lorraine insisted on replacing the dated custom cabinetry with sterile, white lacquer. This oak was hard, honest, and full of character. I was sanding a piece, testing the tensile strength of a mortise and tenon joint, when the smell of the cut wood, a sharp, almost vanilla-like scent, threw me back in time. Thanksgiving, 10 years ago, I was 22, home from college. Lorraine was hosting her first major holiday dinner. I was wearing a simple gray wool dress. She had cornered me by the wine cabinet. "Adeline, be a dear and top everyone off," she had said. Not a request. "I think Mr. Henderson has had enough." "Lorraine," I said quietly. The man was listening to one side. Lorraine's smile did not change, but her eyes went flat. "Excuse me? I am just not comfortable serving him more. He is—" "You," she whispered, stepping closer, "are the help I cannot fire. Your dress is filthy. Do not embarrass your father." She brushed an imaginary piece of lint from my shoulder. "Now go and pour the wine." I stood there, paralyzed by the casual cruelty, the dismissal. My father, standing 10 feet away, saw the exchange. He watched me freeze. He watched Lorraine's cold smile. He turned away, laughing at something Mr. Henderson slurred, and pretended not to see. He chose the varnish. I looked down at the joint in my hands. In woodworking, a structure's integrity depends entirely on its joints. A dovetail, a box joint, a mortise and tenon. They are where the pieces meet, where the stress is held. For 10 years, Lorraine had been systematically applying pressure to every joint in our family, every humiliation, every dismissal. Every time she called me sensitive or difficult was a small mallet tap, weakening the bond. That grand dining table at the Orchard House, the one my grandfather built, looked solid. But I knew what was underneath. I knew the joinery was failing. And my father, I finally understood him. He was not a structure. He was a finish. He was a thick, high-gloss layer of varnish. He looked beautiful, protected the surface, made everything shine, but he offered no structural support. The second you applied real pressure, the varnish just cracked. It held nothing together. "You are going to cut right through your thumb if you keep staring at it like that." I looked up, startled. Eddie Holm was standing in my studio doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee. He had been checking on me since the tire incident. "Sorry," I said, releasing my grip on the chisel. "I was somewhere else." "Yeah, I figured." He set the coffee on my workbench, careful to place it on a clean spot. "The past?" "The past," I agreed. "And the present." He looked at the oak board in the vise. "This is good wood, strong grain. Where did you get it?" "My father's house, an old kitchen." "Using the pane to build the thing, huh?" he said, sipping his coffee. I nodded. "Using the pane as the structure." He stayed for 2 hours, helping me run the reclaimed beams through the industrial planer. Our friendship was easy, built on the quiet understanding of work. We talked about wood, about tools, about the weather. He never asked about the case. He never offered pity. He just showed up, and he was not afraid to be seen with me. It was more than anyone else in Riverton was doing. It was enough. The email from Juniper arrived that evening, just as the sun was setting, casting long, dramatic shadows across my wall of evidence. This was not a tip. This was an indictment. It was a single spreadsheet, a full 3-year breakdown of Sunrise Hearth's expenditures. Marla had warned me it would be bad. It was catastrophic. Total donations received in 3 years, just over $1.2 million. Total spent on actual, verifiable community services, food bank purchases, shelter partnerships, $90,000, less than 8%. Total paid to vendors and consultants, $1.1 million. And there, in Juniper's meticulously footnoted column, was the kill shot. Of that $1.1 million, 68%, over $750,000, was paid directly to Bluefin Events. The money went from the Riverton Community Fund into my father's trust, into Sunrise Hearth, and straight into Lorraine's pocket. I felt dizzy. I had to sit down. This was not a family dispute. It was the largest charity fraud in the history of our town. A certified letter arrived the next day. It was not from a lawyer. It was from the Riverton Charity Board. My stomach clenched. I thought it was another cease and desist. It was a formal summons. "You are hereby requested to appear, to provide testimony as a material witness regarding the financial activities of the Sunrise Hearth Fund." Marla had done it. She had quietly presented Juniper's spreadsheet and my father's ledgers to the board's president. They were opening an investigation. They had given me a name. I was not just the daughter. I was not a disgruntled artist. I was the whistleblower. Lorraine must have been notified at the same time. Her reaction was immediate and loud. She went on the offensive. A new glossy campaign appeared overnight. The winter hearth boxes. Flyers were posted all over town, featuring a soft focus photo of Lorraine holding a basket of food, her face a mask of compassionate concern. She was hosting an emergency telethon, a new fundraiser to combat the cruel and baseless rumors and ensure our community's most vulnerable are fed this winter. It was brilliant. She was painting herself as the victim, and me as the monster trying to steal food from the mouths of the poor. The social media comments turned even more vicious. How can Adeline sleep at night, attacking a woman doing God's work? While Lorraine played the saint, Dylan played the rat. Eddie, who had been keeping an eye on the house, called me. "You are not going to believe this. Dylan just showed up at the Orchard House with 2 massive aluminum briefcases, the kind you move cash or documents in. He let himself in. Looked like he was moving in." "He is securing the files," I said, the pieces clicking into place. "My father is at the auditor's. Lorraine is exposed. Dylan is trying to take control of the paper trail, probably to destroy it. Or, I thought, to blackmail her himself. The family was not just fracturing, it was cannibalizing itself." The war room on my wall felt incomplete. It was all finance, all crime. It was missing the personal. It was missing the why. An envelope was slid under my studio door. No stamp, no return address, hand-delivered. Inside was a single photograph, a color photocopy of a canceled check. It was from the Sunrise Hearth account, made out to a prestigious, eye-wateringly expensive out-of-state university. The amount was for $65,000, full tuition. The memo line read, "Scholarship Grant, D. Vale." It was Dylan's tuition, paid for by the Warm Meals Fund. At the bottom of the envelope was a note, scribbled on my father's personal letterhead. He said it was an educational grant. She told me it was for for disadvantaged youths. Victor, he was not just a coward, he was an armorer. He was slipping me the bullets, one by one, while he hid in his bunker. I looked at the picture of the check, the blunt, vulgar theft. I walked over to my workbench, found a simple, clean-lined black frame I had built for a canceled project. I matted the photocopy and framed it. I hung it on the wall, right in the center of the evidence map. It was not just evidence anymore. It was art. It was a reminder of what that slap in the dark was really about. It was not about honor. It was about this. My phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize. From the city planning office. "Is this Ms. Lara?" "Yes," I said, my voice tense. "This is Janine from the Riverton Commons project. We just wanted to inform you. The selection committee has reviewed the first-round proposals. The Found Timber Pavilion. Well, Adeline, you are one of the 3 finalists." I hung up the phone and looked at the wall. Lorraine was trying to brand me as a destructive, unstable force. Dylan was trying to bury me in libel. My father was hiding. But the city had just seen my work, my structure, my design, and they had called it good. I touched the framed check. One piece of my life was clean. One piece was still mine. Civic Hall was not a courtroom. It was a place for zoning disputes and budget approvals. A large, sterile room with beige walls, fluorescent lighting, and that faint, dusty smell of public service. But today, every seat was full. The 5 members of the Riverton Charity Board sat at a raised dais, their faces grim. In the front row, a reporter from the Riverton Ledger scribbled in a notepad. Lorraine was already there, seated next to a man in a $3,000 suit. She was not the screaming fury from the driveway. She was a picture of subdued sorrow, dressed in a modest gray suit, a simple string of pearls at her throat. She looked like a woman wronged, a martyr. Marla and I sat at the adjacent table. She spread her files, a neat, organized line of battle. The chairman, a man named Henderson, the same Mr. Henderson I had spoken to at the party, called the hearing to order. Lorraine's lawyer, Kenzie, spoke first. His voice was a smooth, deep baritone, designed to soothe and reassure. "Mr. Chairman, members of the board," he began, "what we have here is a tragedy, a deeply personal family dispute. We are all here today because of a daughter's profound distress, a misunderstanding that has spiraled, fueled by grief and, frankly, professional jealousy." He gestured toward me. "We are prepared to show that this is a domestic matter, not a public one, and we respectfully ask that this hearing be moved to a private session to protect the family." Marla stood. She was half his height, but her voice cut through his like a ripsaw. "Mr. Chairman, Mr. Kenzie is mistaken," she said, her voice sharp and clear. "This is not a family dispute. This is a public fraud. We are here because more than $1.2 million in public funds, much of it directed from the Riverton Community Fund, has been funneled into a shell game. This is not about professional jealousy. It is about felony identity theft, embezzlement, and mail fraud. The public has a right to know what happened to their money." The chairman's eyes narrowed. "Motion to move to private session is denied. Proceed. Ms. Pike?" I call Adeline Lara to the stand. I walked to the podium. My hands were steady. I looked at the board, not at her. "Ms. Lara," Marla began, "can you please tell the board what occurred on the evening of November 27th, Thanksgiving?" Kenzie shot to his feet. "Objection. This is precisely the kind of domestic theatrics I warned against. This has no bearing on financial accounting." "It has every bearing," Marla countered, not missing a beat. "It establishes motive for the subsequent libel campaign and proves the lengths Ms. Vale Lara will go to silence legitimate questions about her fund. Ms. Lara asked about the finances. This was the response." "Proceed. Ms. Lara," the chairman said. I told them about the dinner, the question I asked, the confrontation in the driveway, the slap, the garage door. "It is a story," Kenzie said with a dismissive wave. A dramatic, rehearsed story from a daughter who has a history of instability. Was it Ms. Lara? Marla asked. I placed my smartwatch on the document projector. I recorded it. I pressed play. The video was small, just a chaotic view of gravel in my coat, but the audio was pristine. It filled the beige room. Lorraine's voice, clear and cold. You tried to tarnish my honor. You embarrassed me. And then, the sound, the sharp, ugly crack of the slap. A woman in the back row gasped. The reporter's head snapped up. One of the board members, a woman in a blue suit, put her hand to her mouth. I watched Lorraine's face. She did not move, but her knuckles, clasped on the table, were white. I then call Eddie home, Marla said. Eddie walked up, his work boots loud on the tile floor. He was nervous, but his voice was solid. He confirmed his address, confirmed his dash cam, confirmed seeing me, Lorraine, and Dylan in the driveway. And did your camera record any audio, Mr. Holm? Yes, ma'am. The wind was high, so the mic was sensitive. Marla played the second file. It was just sound. Wind, faint yelling, and then a massive, grinding crash of metal on metal, the unmistakable sound of the heavy garage door slamming shut. Thank you, Mr. Holm. Kenzie declined to cross-examine. He knew better. Marla turned back to the board, her demeanor shifting from physical threat to financial dissection. She projected my evidence wall onto the large screen. This, she said, using a laser pointer, is the money. It comes from the Riverton Community Fund and from Mr. Lara's private trust. It lands in the Sunrise Hearth account. She clicked a new slide. It does not stay. 92% of it is immediately paid out to two entities, Bluefin Events, LLC, and Vale Strategic, LLC. She pointed to the Bluefin invoices. $750,000 for event planning. She pointed to the Vale Strategic invoices. $200,000 for marketing. She turned to face Lorraine and her lawyer. Mr. Kenzie, your client claims her charity provides warm meals. We have subpoenaed her bank records. We cannot find a single payment to a grocery distributor, not one check to a caterer, not one payroll stub for a driver or a cook. So I ask, what services, exactly? Did Bluefin Events and Vale Strategic provide for $1.1 million? Kenzie's smooth demeanor was gone. He looked ruffled. My client contracted for those services in good faith. If those vendors, if they failed in their duties. If she failed, Marla said, feigning surprise. But she owns Bluefin Events, and her son owns Vale Strategic. She was contracting with herself. She was paying herself. The room erupted in murmurs. The chairman banged his gavel. Order! And then, Marla said, her voice dropping, there is the matter of the HELOC. She called the representative from Riverton Mutual. The woman confirmed it all. The application for $300,000, my name, my social security number, the forged signature. And the most interesting part, Marla said, where did this digital application originate? The bank rep read from her notes. The IP address for the submission is registered to the corporate offices of Bluefin Events, LLC. Kenzie was on his feet, sputtering. This is an outrage. My client is the victim here, a victim of overzealous employees. Someone in her office was clearly trying to impress her, acted without her knowledge, a disgruntled former employee. Marla smiled, that cold, sharp smile. A disgruntled employee? One who had access to Ms. Lara's private, non-public information, including her social security number? One who committed a felony on her behalf? That is a very serious accusation. Mr. Kenzie, please, name them. Kenzie froze. The room was silent. He could not name a person. He had no one. We are conducting a full internal investigation, he stammered. I see. A chair scraped in the back of the room. Mr. Chairman? My father. He was standing, his hands shaking. He looked 100 years old. "Mr. Lara," the chairman said, his voice soft. "Do you wish to speak?" Lorraine turned, her eyes wide, a silent, furious command. "Sit down." My father ignored her. He walked slowly, unsteadily, to the podium. He did not look at me. I am Victor Lara. I sit on the board of the community fund. I directed those funds to Sunrise Hearth." Kenzie moved toward him. "Victor, this is ill-advised." "No," my father said, his voice stronger. He pushed his lawyer's hand away. "I signed the papers, all of them. Whatever my wife put in front of me, I signed." He finally looked at the board, his eyes full of a terrible, dawning shame. "I signed because I trusted my wife. I was told it was for warm meals, for winter boxes. I see now. I was a fool. I did not do my due diligence." He took a deep breath. "As a director of the community fund, and as the primary donor, I am formally requesting this board authorize a full, independent, forensic audit of every dollar Sunrise Hearth has ever received." It was done. He had confirmed it. He had sacrificed his own reputation to confirm it. Lorraine sat bolt upright, her mask of sorrow shattered, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. She was staring at me. The board did not even recess. The chairman called for a vote. It was unanimous. "This board hereby orders an immediate freeze on all assets and accounts held by Sunrise Hearth," he announced, his voice booming. "We demand a full turnover of all ledgers, communications, and financial records within 7 business days, pending a full criminal investigation." The gavel slammed down. It was over. As the room dissolved into chaos, Marla grabbed my arm and steered me toward the exit. We had to pass their table. Lorraine's lawyer was frantically stuffing papers into his briefcase. Lorraine was staring into the middle distance. Dylan, however, was looking right at me. As I passed, he leaned in, his voice a venomous whisper that only I could hear. "You are going to pay for this, Adeline. You are dead." I did not stop. I did not look at him. I just kept walking. We burst out into the afternoon light, into a sea of flashing cameras. The reporter from the Ledger was right there. Ms. Lara, is it true you found the evidence after she locked you in the garage?" The name stuck. I felt a strange, dizzying wave of both fear and profound relief. I could breathe. We pushed through the crowd and got to my car. "They are done, Adeline," Marla said, giving my arm a squeeze. "They just do not know it yet." I drove back to Forge Row, my hands shaking so hard I could barely hold the wheel. I just wanted to be in my studio. I just wanted to smell sawdust and be alone. I got to my door, the heavy steel door. I went to put my key in the lock. And I stopped. The metal around the deadbolt was savaged. It was scarred with deep, long gouges, pry marks. Someone had been here. Someone had tried to force their way in while I was at the hearing. My heart stopped. I slammed the door open. My studio was wrecked. They had tossed the place. My sketches were torn from the walls. My tools were scattered. Bags of sawdust had been ripped open. They had been looking for the originals. They had been looking for the ledgers. I ran to the back wall, to the corner where I had installed the new safe. It was there, scratched, dented from where they had tried to pry it from the floor, but it was closed. It was intact. I leaned against it, my legs giving out. They were not just threatening me. They were acting. They were desperate, and they had failed. The hearing was not the end. It was the starting gun. The board gave Lorraine 7 days to hand over the books. 7 days for her to shred, to delete, to hide. 7 days for us to find out where she would run. Marla was faster. The attempted break-in at my studio was the escalation she needed. She used it to get an immediate, emergency subpoena for data preservation. "They have 7 days to comply with the board," Marla said, her voice tight over the phone. "But this subpoena means that as of right now, every keystroke they delete is spoliation of evidence. We have them." Discovery was no longer a distant threat. It was breathing down their necks. The real break came on day 2, a text from a new burner number. Juniper, it just said, North parking lot, 4 p.m., greengrocer, be alone. The supermarket parking lot was a sea of gray slush. It felt too bright, too public, and I felt a target painted on my back. I found the dark green sedan. The passenger door clicked open. I slid in. Juniper did not look like a hero. She was just a terrified woman in her late 40s, her hands shaking so hard she could barely grip the steering wheel. "They are auditing us," she whispered, staring straight ahead. "Blue Fen. They are looking for the leak. I should not be here." "I am grateful," I said. "Gratitude will not pay my mortgage when she fires me." She fumbled in her coat pocket and pulled out a tiny USB drive, the kind that disappears on a keychain. "This is it. This is the last of it. I am done." She pressed the drive into my palm. It was warm. "It is the exit plan." She was not just stealing. She was planning to run. "Do not contact me again. Ever." I got out. The green sedan was gone before I had taken 2 steps. I did not go to my studio. I did not go home. I went straight to Marla's office. We plugged the drive into an air-gapped laptop, one that never touched the internet. It was not just a spreadsheet. It was a separate, hidden set of books, a schedule of wire transfers, not to Dylan's shell company, not even to Blue Fen. These were massive, 6-figure outgoing wires to an entity I had never seen before, Belgravia Shore Limited. Marla typed the name into a specialized search. "Belgravia Shore," she breathed. "It is a shell, registered in the Cayman Islands. She was moving the money offshore. Adeline, this is not just state fraud. This is federal." There was more. A subfolder named HELOC. Inside, a single, saved email. From Lorraine to her attorney, dated 2 days before Thanksgiving. The text was simple. "The bank says the guarantor application is the last step. Wait for the $300,000 HELOC disbursement. Once it lands, wire it to Belgravia and close the books on sunrise. We will be in Costa Rica before the new year." Marla sat back, pushing her glasses up. My God, she was going to rob the charity, drain the equity from the house using your forged signature, and leave you holding the bag for the entire loan. This is it. This is the intent. This is the whole case. The 7-day clock was still ticking. I could not just wait. I focused on Dylan. He was the weak link, arrogant and sloppy. His Winter Hearth Boxes campaign was all over social media. He had posted photos of a newly renovated community kitchen that Sunrise Hearth had allegedly paid for. I recognized the tile work. I did a reverse image search. It was a stock photo from a high-end kitchen design website. The fund had paid Vail Strategic $90,000 for that renovation. I searched the city permit database. No permits were ever filed for that address. The kitchen did not exist. Then I checked the Texas contractor license database. Vail Strategic was listed as a licensed general contractor. The license number was real. I cross-referenced it. It belonged to a legitimate builder in Houston who had retired 5 years earlier. Dylan had digitally lifted the man's license number and photoshopped his own company name onto it. It was another layer of blatant, stupid fraud. On day 3, an email arrived from my father. It was the first direct contact since the cafe. The subject line was just a string of numbers. The body was a single link to a cloud drive and a password. I opened it. It was his entire digital life. Scans of documents, bank statements, trusts. He had given me everything. Tucked in a folder labeled Authorizations were 3 letters, all signed by him. They were letters of unlimited power of attorney, giving Lorraine the right to act on his behalf in all financial matters. But it was the email chain attached to them that made me cold. It was from Lorraine to my father. "Victor, I need these for the auditors. Sign them." His reply? "Lorraine, this is highly irregular. This gives you total control." Her reply? "Are you calling me a liar? After all I have done? You will sign these, or I will tell the Community Fund Board just how little you actually supervise your own accounts. Your reputation will be mud." He had signed them under duress. He was weak, but she was coercive. It was evidence. On day 4, the final axe fell. The call came from the residential library project, my last client, the one that had been on hold. "Adeline," the client said, her voice full of that terrible, soft pity. "We just cannot proceed. The board. They saw the news." "The news was positive," I said, my voice hollow. "I was the whistleblower. They just see the name, Lara, fraud. They see the mess. We have to go with someone less complicated. I am so sorry." The project was canceled. I checked my business account. The deposit I was counting on was gone. My balance was $1,840. I could not cover my studio rent, let alone my part-time assistant. I was, for all intents and purposes, bankrupt. Marla was finalizing the civil suit, the fraud, the identity theft, the assault, the libel, but to file it, to serve them, cost money, filing fees, process server fees, money I did not have. I looked around my studio. The one thing I had left was my work. I had a set of chairs I had just finished, 4 dining chairs, carved from that salvaged orchard house oak. They were severe, minimalist, strong. The joinery was exposed. I had been calling them the garage night set. I posted them on my dormant business Instagram. Studio sale, one of a kind. Need to sell today. Message for price. I was asking for $4,000, just enough to cover Marla's fees. A message came back in minutes. "I will take the full set. I will pay your asking price, in full, cash." My stomach tightened. "Where would you like to see them?" The reply? "No need. I know your work. Deliver them to the front steps of Civic Hall. 6 p.m. tonight. I will be waiting." Civic Hall, where the hearing was, where Dylan had threatened me. This was a trap. It had to be Lorraine or Dylan, luring me out, either to serve me with their defamation suit or to threaten me again. I messaged Marla. "I think they are setting me up. Civic Hall, 6 p.m. Her reply? "Do not go." I looked at my bank account. I looked at the filing fee invoice. I messaged Marla back. "I am going, but I will not be alone." I called Eddie. "I need a favor. I need you to follow me. I think I'm walking into a trap." "Where?" "Civic Hall, 6 p.m. "Adeline," he said, his voice flat. "I was just at your studio. I came by to check on the lock you installed. I found something." "What?" "A tracker. A small, black GPS unit. Magnetic. It was tucked up inside your rear wheel well. Professional grade. They have been following you since the hearing." I sat down, the blood draining from my face, the break-in, the flat tires. They knew every time I went to Marla's. They knew every time I went to the bank. "Did you take it off?" "Yeah. It is on my workbench. I already called the police. They took a report, filed it as aggravated stalking. It is tied to Dylan's restraining order violation. They are looking for him." "Good," I said, my voice hard. "Now I need you to be my tracker. Stay 2 cars back. If I am not out in 10 minutes, call Marla, then call the police." I loaded the heavy oak chairs into my truck. The drive to Civic Hall was the longest of my life. My hands were slick on the wheel. At 6 p.m., the plaza in front of the hall was dark, lit only by the cold municipal lights. A figure was waiting on the steps. It was not Lorraine. It was not Dylan. It was the woman from the charity board, the one in the blue suit who had gasped when she heard the slap. I pulled up, my headlights illuminating her. "Ms. Lara," she said, walking over. I have the chairs," I said, my mind racing. "I know. They are beautiful." She was holding a thick bank envelope. "I am not buying your chairs. Adeline, my name is Eleanor Vance." She held out the envelope. "This is a private grant. From my own family's foundation. It is for $4,000 to cover your legal filing fees." I was stunned. "Why?" "I sat on that board for 10 years, she said, her voice angry. "I believed in Lorraine. I voted to approve those grants. She used me. She used all of us. What you did in that room, took a kind of courage I do not see often in this town. You are a whistleblower. We protect our whistleblowers. I looked at the envelope. I cannot accept this. It is charity. No, Eleanor said firmly. It is an investment. I looked up your proposal for the found timber pavilion. It is magnificent. Consider this a commission, a deposit. You are going to win that bid, and when you do, this town is going to see what you build when you are not locked in the dark. I took the envelope. The money was enough. It was more than enough. I could keep going. I was at Marla's office at 9 a.m. the next morning. Day 6. I handed her the cash. File it, I said. She spent the day finalizing the mountain of paper. The civil complaint was a masterpiece. Count 1, fraud. Count 2, identity theft. Count 3, libel per se. Count 4, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Count 5, civil assault. She filed it at 4 p.m., beating Lorraine's 7-day deadline by 24 hours. The court's response came back faster than we expected. They had received the complaint. They had reviewed the restraining order. They had seen the police report for the tracker and the break-in. The clerk had assigned a judge and set a date for the preliminary hearing. Marla read the email, and a slow, cold smile spread across her face. What? I asked. You are not going to believe this, she said. The court has scheduled the hearing. They set the date. She turned the monitor toward me. Preliminary hearing. Lara v. Val Lara, et al., Riverton Superior Court. The date was set for the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, exactly 1 year, almost to the day, after I was standing in the cold, listening to that garage door slam. The circle is closing, Adeline, Marla said. We are bringing Thanksgiving right back to them. The next few months were a strange truce. The legal battle moved into the slow, grinding phase of discovery, a war fought entirely through paper. My life, however, needed to be rebuilt from the studs up. I poured every cent of Eleanor Vance's deposit into wood. I threw myself into the found timber pavilion. It was the only thing that made sense, the only place where the rules were clear. Wood was honest. It told you its history and its grain. It did not lie. It did not gaslight. It did not forge your name. I worked with the massive reclaimed beams, some still bearing the marks of their first life in the old textile mill. As I planned the joinery, I started a private ritual. I took my smallest chisel and, on the surfaces that would be hidden, where the beams would lock together, I started carving. On the main support beam, I carved Orchard Nov 27, 10:36 p.m., the moment the garage door slammed. On the crossbeam that would hold the roof, HELOC Application 588B, the forgery. On a supporting strut, Invoice 12, Vale Strategic, 20K, date after date, number after number. I etched the evidence into the very structure of the pavilion. I was not just building a public space, I was building a monument to the truth. The joinery was not just holding wood together, it was holding my story. My reputation in Riverton was still in tatters. The Garage Night Truth hashtag had faded, but the Riverton disrespect one lingered, fanned by Lorraine's allies. I was still the unstable artist. I could not get a client, but I could still work. I put a sign in my studio window. Free furniture repair clinic, seniors only, Saturdays. The first Saturday, an elderly woman named Mrs. Gable came in, carrying a small, 3-legged wooden stool. My grandmother's, she whispered, her hands trembling. The leg just gave way. I looked at it. The joint had failed. I cleaned out the old glue. I reshaped the tenon. I applied new wood glue, clamped it, and let it set. An hour later, I handed it back to her, solid as the day it was made. She tried to pay me. I refused. Just tell me a story about it, I said. She did, and the next week, she brought 2 friends. They brought wobbly chairs, split cutting boards, and picture frames that had come apart. I fixed them all. I did not charge a cent. We drank coffee, and they talked. They talked about the town. They talked about how things used to be. They talked about how Sunrise Hearth had promised to fund a new wing for the senior center, a promise that evaporated. I was not just fixing their furniture, I was fixing my name, one small, honest repair at a time. The reporter from the Riverton Ledger, the one who had been at the hearing, started showing up. He did not ask about the case. He just watched me work. He watched me interacting with the seniors. He saw the joinery. The article he wrote ran on the front page of the lifestyle section. It was not about the lawsuit. It was about the craft. He called me the carpenter of truth. He wrote about how I was using reclaimed materials to build new structures from broken pieces. He quoted Mrs. Gable, who said I had good hands. It was the first kind thing anyone in the press had said about me in a year. The tide was turning. My father was a ghost. He had moved out of the Orchard House and into the long-term stay Riverton Hotel. He sent me a text. Just 3 words. I am sorry. I stared at the message for a long time. I thought of the garage. I thought of his silence at the cafe. I thought of the key. I thought of the check for Dylan's tuition. I texted back, I will see you on the witness stand. Dylan, meanwhile, was imploding. He had lost his primary funding. In a desperate attempt to appear legitimate, he launched a pop-up community kitchen renovation. He live-streamed it, trying to trade on the winter hearth box's sympathy. It was a disaster. He was standing in a rented warehouse space with 2 drywall boards, trying to explain his vision. What he did not count on was that the city inspector, tipped off by Marla, was also watching the stream. The inspector showed up in the middle of the live stream. Sir, I need to see your contractor's license. Dylan's face went pale. The live stream caught it all. It is at the office. And your permits? For the electrical? The plumbing? Dylan looked at the camera, his eyes wide with panic, and abruptly ended the feed. The video was screen-recorded and all over the Riverton forums within an hour. His credibility, and Lorraine's, took a nosedive. Marla was making progress. She had taken Juniper's evidence to the district attorney. Juniper was officially granted whistleblower protection, free from retaliation. She filed a formal labor complaint against Bluefin for wage theft and coercion. Then, the best news, a call from Janine at the city. Adeline, the board just voted. The Found Timber Pavilion. You won. I was stunned. The city had picked me. They had chosen my design. The press event was small, just the committee and the other finalists. They handed me the microphone. My hands were shaking. I looked at Eleanor Vance, who was smiling from the front row. Thank you, I said, my voice rough. This pavilion is important. It is built from reclaimed wood, which means it has a past. I believe structures should be honest about their past. I took a breath. The core design for this came to me on a cold night last November, a night when I was locked in a garage. I was in the dark, thinking about how structures fail and how they can be rebuilt. This pavilion is my answer to that. It is strong, it is honest, and it is transparent, and I cannot wait to build it for you. I handed the mic back. The room was silent. Then, Eleanor Vance stood up and began to clap. Lorraine did not take it well. 2 days later, a video appeared on her Facebook page. It was her, shot in her pristine living room, tears streaming down her face. I just do not understand. She wept, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. I have given my life to this community, to helping the less fortunate, and my family. My own family has turned against me. They are telling such awful, twisted lies. I do not know why. I do not know what I did to deserve this. I just wanted to provide warm meals. It was a perfect performance. The comments section was a war zone. Half the town rushed to her defense. Stay strong. Lorraine, we believe in you. The other half was not buying it. Warm meals for Belgravia Shore looted? Where is Dylan's permit? Ask her about the HELOC. The crack was showing. The public was divided. Marla got a warrant. It was limited, based on Juniper's testimony, but it was enough. It gave her one-time access to Blue Fen's transaction history. It confirmed the wires to Belgravia Shore. She now had the complete, undeniable map of the money. My studio needed to be a fortress. Eddie came over and installed a new, comprehensive camera system, steel-plated doors, new locks, motion sensors. "They are stupid, Addie, but they are cornered," he said, testing the feed. "Cornered animals are dangerous." While he worked, we talked. Marla needed a way to show the jury what had happened. A spreadsheet was boring. A jury would fall asleep. "I need a visual," I said. "Like the wall, but simpler." Eddie and I spent the weekend building it. It was a large, angled display board, like a piece of my pavilion. We used 3 different colors of tape to show the money flow: red for the community fund money, yellow for my father's trust, blue for the public donations. We showed it all flowing into a central box labeled Sunrise Hearth. Then, from that box, the lines diverged. A tiny green line, less than 8%, went to a box labeled Community. The rest, a massive river of red, yellow, and blue, flowed directly into boxes labeled Blue Fen, Vale Strategic, and Belgravia Shore. We mounted the forged check for Dylan's tuition right in the middle. It was horrifying, and it was so simple a child could understand it. It was the centerpiece of our case. The trial prep began. Marla was relentless, grilling me for hours. "They are going to call you a liar. The evidence says I am not. They are going to say you did this for money. My business is bankrupt. I did this for the truth. They are going to say you hate your stepmother, that this is just a family dispute." "This is not a family dispute," I said, my voice cold and practiced. "This is a white-collar criminal case. My feelings are irrelevant." "Good," Marla said, nodding. "Short answers. Stick to the facts. Do not get pulled into the drama. You are not a daughter. You are not a victim. You are the whistleblower. You are the expert witness. Never forget that." That night, I went home, my mind buzzing with facts and dates. I opened my closet. Tucked in the back was the plastic evidence bag. I pulled out the coat I wore that night. A year had passed, but the smell was still there, that cloying, heavy scent of gardenia, and underneath it, the smell of the garage, old paint, gasoline, and dust. I looked at it, the physical proof of that night. I folded it carefully. I put it in a new, clean evidence box. I labeled the top, Exhibit A, the coat, Nov 27th. I closed the lid, sealing the smell, and the memory, inside. I was ready. The courtroom was packed. It smelled of floor wax, stale coffee, and collective anxiety. This was not the small, administrative hearing at Civic Hall. This was Riverton Superior Court, a room of dark wood and high ceilings, presided over by Judge Marion Shaw, a woman with a reputation for surgically precise impatience. Lorraine sat at the defense table, a vision of exhausted virtue. She wore no jewelry, just a simple beige knit dress that looked both expensive and modest. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun. She was playing the role of the tired philanthropist, weary from her good works and baffled by this persecution. Dylan sat beside her, bouncing one leg, a storm cloud of sullen entitlement. "Mr. Kenzie, you may begin," Judge Shaw said. "Thank you, Your Honor," Kenzie said, rising smoothly. "The defense would like to establish a pattern of behavior from the plaintiff, a pattern of financial distress and, sadly, extortion." He produced a document. "We are submitting into evidence an email, marked Defense Exhibit A, sent from Ms. Lara's personal account to her father, Mr. Victor Lara, 1 week before the unfortunate Thanksgiving incident. I will read it aloud." He cleared his throat. "Dad, I am in serious trouble. The shop is failing. I need $50,000, or I'm going to have to do something drastic. Please do not make me ask publicly. Just give me the money, Addie." A murmur went through the courtroom. I felt my blood run cold. I looked at Marla. She was perfectly still, watching Kenzie. "This," Kenzie boomed, "is not a lawsuit. It is a shakedown. When her father refused, she concocted this elaborate fantasy of fraud. This entire case is an act of financial retaliation. Ms. Pike? The judge asked, her voice dangerously neutral. Your Honor, the plaintiff would like to call our digital forensics expert, Dr. Aris Thorne, to examine this fascinating piece of fiction. Thorne was a small, neat man with a clinical, detached air. He placed the email printout under a document camera. Mr. Kenzie was kind enough to provide us with the original digital file this morning, Marla said. Dr. Thorne, what did you find? The email is a fabrication, Your Honor, Thorne said simply. A very clumsy one. Kenzie's head snapped up. Objection, that is a conclusion. Overruled. Explain, Dr. Thorne, the judge said. Certainly. The body of the email, the text, is fine, but the sender metadata is wrong. The MIME header, that is the email's digital fingerprint, has been manipulated. It shows the email originated from a server. Registered to Vail Strategic, LLC, not Ms. Lara's provider. The courtroom went silent. Furthermore, Thorne continued, the internal timestamp in the header does not match the sent time on the email itself. It is off by 48 hours. Someone created it on a Tuesday, but tried to make it look like it was sent on a Thursday. They failed to cover their tracks. Kenzie was sputtering. Dylan was staring at his lawyer, his face a mask of furious betrayal. He had faked the email, and he had done it badly. Thank you, Doctor, Marla said. Your Honor, the plaintiff calls Adeline Lara. I walked to the stand. My heart was a hammer against my ribs, but my hands were steady. I swore the oath. Marla led me through it, the dinner, the question, the driveway. And what happened at 10:35 p.m.? My stepmother, Lorraine Vale Lara, slapped me across the face. And then? She and my stepbrother, Dylan Vale, forced me into a detached garage and locked me inside. Kenzie was on his feet. Objection, Your Honor. This is uncorroborated, self-serving theatrics. Ms. Pike, do you have corroboration? I do, Your Honor, Ms. Lara. What did you do when the confrontation began? I activated the audio and video recorder on my smartwatch. I placed the watch on the podium. Marla dimmed the lights. We played the file. The slap echoed through the courtroom, loud and shocking, Lorraine's voice. You embarrassed me, was chillingly clear. And the garage? Marla asked. I call Mr. Eddie Holm. Mr. Holm, you provided a notarized audio file from your vehicle's dashcam. What did it record at 10:36 p.m.? It recorded this, ma'am. Eddie's voice was firm. He played the file. The grinding, metallic crash of the garage door slamming shut filled the room. Finally, Marla said, we subpoenaed the electronic gate logs from the orchard house. Your Honor, the logs show the main driveway gate opening for Ms. Lara's car at 10:28 p.m. It does not show her car leaving until 5:47 a.m. the next morning. She was on the property, and she was not in the house. The timeline was locked. The slap was real. The garage was real. Now, Marla said, let us talk about the motive, the HELOC. She called the bank representative, who repeated her testimony from the hearing. The application was filed from an IP address at the Bluefen Events office. Mr. Kenzie, Marla said, has argued that this was a rogue employee, but we have also subpoenaed Bluefen's own internal security camera footage for that date and time. She played the video on the main screen, a grainy, time-stamped shot of the Bluefen office. It showed Lorraine and Dylan huddled together at a computer terminal, the same terminal the bank had traced the IP address to, at the exact time the application was filed. Lorraine, who had been the picture of calm, stared at the screen, her composure finally cracking. Your Honor, Marla said, the defense rests on a foundation of lies, a faked email, a false rogue employee narrative. Now, we will present the truth. This is where the twists began. Plaintiff calls Victor Lara. My father walked to the stand. He looked like he had aged 20 years. He did not look at me. He did not look at Lorraine. He looked at the floor. Mr. Lara, Marla said, her voice softening just a fraction. You signed many documents for your wife, correct? Yes, he whispered. Believing they were for a legitimate charity? Yes. Kenzie stood. Your Honor, the witness is clearly distressed. Ms. Pike is leading him. Mr. Lara, Marla continued, ignoring him. Did there come a time when you stopped trusting your wife? Yes, he said, his voice cracking. After the cafe. After Adeline showed me the forged signature. And what did you do? My father reached into his breast pocket. He pulled out a small, black, leather-bound notebook. I kept a log. Every time she pressured me. Every time she forced me to sign something I did not understand. What did she force you to sign? This, he said, his voice breaking. He produced the 3 letters of authorization, the ones giving her total power of attorney. She threatened to ruin my reputation. She told me she would tell the board I was senile. I was a coward. I signed them. Lorraine was staring at him, her face white with rage. She was mouthing the word no. Thank you. Mr. Lara, no further questions. Plaintiff calls Juniper Collins. Juniper walked to the stand. This was the first time I had seen her in the light. She was terrified, but resolute. Ms. Collins, you were the financial manager at Bluefen Events? I was, she said, her voice shaking but clear. And did you receive your full salary? No, ma'am. On the 5th of every month, Lorraine Vale Lara would call me into her office. I would be handed my paycheck, and then I would be handed a voluntary donation form for Sunrise Hearth. I was required to sign it, giving back 30% of my salary. Required? She told me it was a condition of my employment. She called it team spirit. It was 30%, or I was fired. That is extortion, Marla said. And where did this donated money go? Into the same Belgravia Shore account as all the rest. Twist 2. The room was buzzing. Plaintiff calls Mr. Neil Ham, Marla said. A man in a blue Postal Service uniform took the stand. Mr. Ham, you have been the mail carrier for the Riverton Business District for 15 years? Yes, ma'am. And did you deliver packages to the Sunrise Hearth office? All the time. They were always receiving large shipments of these nice gift baskets, food, blankets, that sort of thing. And did you deliver these baskets to the needy? To shelters? To food banks? No, ma'am. My route had me pick them up from Sunrise Hearth and deliver them to a different address. What address was that? A warehouse unit over on Elm, the one rented by Vale Strategic, LLC. Twist 3. The baskets were not for the poor. They were props, cycled between the shell companies. Marla turned her attention to the defense table. Plaintiff calls Dylan Vale. Dylan swaggered to the stand, trying to project an air of unbothered confidence. Kenzie had clearly prepped him. Mr. Vale, you are the owner of Vale Strategic? That is right. We provide high-end marketing and consulting. And construction? Yeah, renovations. We do it all. Like the $90,000 kitchen renovation for Sunrise Hearth? That is correct. A state-of-the-art facility. Marla put the picture of the stock photo kitchen on the screen. Is this the kitchen? That is one of them, yes. Dylan lied, puffing out his chest. I see it. Mr. Vale, could you please show the court your valid Texas General Contractor's license? It is at my office. That is convenient, because we have it right here. Marla projected the document, the one with the stolen license number. This is the license you filed with the city, correct? It is. Please direct your attention to the official seal of the state of Texas. Marla zoomed in, and zoomed in again. The seal was blurry. The pixels were visible. The edges were ragged. It was a terrible Photoshop job. Mr. Vale, Marla said, her voice dripping with contempt. It appears your state-of-the-art construction company has a state-of-the-art forgery. Dylan turned bright red. He looked at Kenzie. He looked at his mother. My graphic designer must have. It is a clerical error. A clerical felony, Marla countered. No further questions. Kenzie did not even try a redirect. Judge Shaw looked as if she had just swallowed acid. She looked at the evidence. She looked at Lorraine. This court finds that the plaintiff has provided sufficient, indeed overwhelming, evidence of probable success on the merits. A temporary injunction is hereby granted. All assets, personal and professional, tied to Sunrise Hearth, Bluefen Events, and Vale Strategic are frozen, effective immediately. Lorraine's face, for the first time, showed pure animal panic. The money, it was gone. Kenzie, looking desperate, stood up. Your Honor, we strenuously object. We have not had time to prepare for these surprise witnesses. We have exculpatory evidence. We need a continuance, at least 60 days. Judge Shaw stared at him. A continuance? Mr. Kenzie, you brought a fabricated email into my courtroom. You have presented a defense built on perjury. You are lucky you are not facing sanctions. Your request is denied. This court sets the date for final summary judgment. She looked at her calendar. Given the staggering level of public interest, and the fact that this case involves the gross misuse of public charitable funds, this court finds it imperative that the community hear the resolution as soon as possible. She looked up, her eyes landing on Lorraine. The final presentations will be held on the evening of November 27th, Thanksgiving. This court will deliver its judgment, and a full press release will be issued to the public at that time. The gavel struck. The courtroom exploded. Lorraine was screaming at Kenzie. Dylan was trying to get out the side door, only to be blocked by reporters. Marla and I slipped out the back. My phone was vibrating so hard it was almost jumping out of my hand. The news was already out. The hashtags were flying. The Riverton disrespect tag was dead. The only one trending now was Garage Night Truth. I did not go home. I went to the studio. The air was cold, but the large space felt safe. It felt like mine. I walked over to the half-finished skeleton of the found timber pavilion. I ran my hand along the massive central beam, the one that would bear the most weight. My fingers traced the chisel marks I had carved into the wood. Orchard Nov 27, 10:36 p.m. It was solid. It was unmovable. It was holding. I stood there for a long time, my back straight, and I waited for the wind to stop. Thanksgiving night. 1 year later, the air in Riverton Commons was sharp and cold, stinging my lungs. But the plaza was packed with people, hundreds. They were bundled in coats and scarves, their breath pluming in the air. The press was here, cameras on tripods, microphones bundled like strange, dark bouquets. The entire city council, the mayor, Eleanor Vance, they were all here for the inauguration of the found timber pavilion. My pavilion. It stood dark against the night sky, a skeleton of strength, waiting. On a temporary stage, floodlights beat back the dark. Marla stood at the lectern. Beside her, on a massive digital screen, was the flowchart, our war room wall, digitized and undeniable. Good evening, Marla said, her voice amplified, cutting through the cold. We are here tonight to dedicate a new public space, but before we do, the city has asked me, as counsel for the whistleblower, to present the final findings of the investigation into the Sunrise Hearth Fund. A collective intake of breath. The crowd surged forward. What you see behind me, Marla said, gesturing to the chart, is not charity, it is a crime. She used her laser pointer. The red dot was merciless. You see the money from the community fund. You see the money from the Lara Trust. Over $1.2 million. Now, look here. She pointed to the small green line. This is what went to the community. Less than 8%. $90,000. In 3 years. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. And where did the rest go? She asked. The red dot moved. $750,000 to Bluefen Events, an entity owned by Lorraine Vale Lara. $200,000 to Vale Strategic, an entity owned by her son, Dylan Vale. And the rest to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. It was not a warm meals fund. It was a washing machine. She let that hang in the air. The investigation confirmed every allegation, and it all started 1 year ago tonight, because one person asked a simple question. I call Adeline Lara. My boots felt heavy on the steps. I walked to the lectern. The light was blinding. I looked out, searching the faces. I saw Mrs. Gable, smiling. I saw Eddie, standing near the light panel, giving me a solid nod. I saw my father, standing near the back, alone. And I saw her, Lorraine, in the front row, reserved for the families of city board members. She was staring at me, her face a rigid mask of hatred. The microphone was cold. I gripped it. 1 year ago tonight, I said, my voice clear, amplified over the crowd. My stepmother slapped me in a dark driveway because I asked about her charity. The crowd gasped. She locked me in a garage for hours to silence me. I paused. I looked right at Lorraine. In that garage, I found the box of files that proved she was a thief. I stepped back from the microphone. I had said what I needed to say. My part was done. It was Lorraine who broke the silence. She lunged from her seat, shoving past a councilman, and scrambled onto the stage. She grabbed the microphone from the stand, her voice a screeching feedback loop. Lies, all of it, libel. She is a disturbed, vindictive, pathological liar. She has destroyed my life. She faked all of it. Tell them, Victor, tell them she is lying. All eyes turned to the back of the crowd. My father began to walk. He did not look at the crowd. He did not look at me. He walked through the sea of people who parted for him and stepped up onto the stage. He looked frail, but his eyes were clear. He was not looking at Lorraine. He was looking at the mayor. He reached into his coat pocket. He did not pull out a speech. He pulled out a small brass key, the key to the safe deposit box. He held it up, letting it catch the light. Then, he walked to the lectern and placed the key on top of it, a dull metallic sound. Lorraine, he said, his voice quiet, but the microphone picked it up and blasted it across the plaza. There are no more keys, not to my accounts, not to my name, and not to the public purse. It is over. Lorraine looked at the key, then at him, her face collapsing from rage into a horrible, gaping disbelief. A man in a dark suit, who I did not recognize, stepped forward from the side of the stage. He took the microphone. By order of the Riverton Superior Court, he announced, his voice booming and impersonal. As of 7 p.m. tonight, November 27th, a permanent judgment is in effect. All assets of Sunrise Hearth, Bluefen Events, and Vale Strategic, LLC, are hereby seized and forfeited, to be paid as restitution to the Riverton Community Fund. Lorraine made a sound, a choked, dying animal sound. The court issues a permanent restraining order, barring Lorraine Vale Lara and Dylan Vale from any contact with the plaintiff, Adeline Lara, and finally, the court orders a full criminal referral to the district attorney's office for felony fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. I saw Dylan. He was on the edge of the stage, near the speakers. He had been lurking, waiting. The moment the word criminal was spoken, he bolted. He jumped off the side of the stage and tried to sprint into the darkness. He did not get 10 feet. "Mr. Vale," a reporter shouted, running after him, a cameraman in tow. "Mr. Vale, was your contractor's license ever real? Did you steal that $90,000? He disappeared into a swarm of flashbulbs and shouting, a coward vanishing into the night. "She lied to us." A new voice. A woman was climbing the steps. It was Mrs. Gable. She was holding a piece of paper. "We, the seniors, we volunteered. She told us the fund was out of money. She had us buy the food ourselves, for the winter hearth boxes." Another man followed her. "Here are my receipts, for the blankets. She said the fund would pay us back. It never did." They were holding them up, crumpled, faded grocery receipts, dozens of them, the real volunteers, the real victims, holding up the proof of their $5 and $10 donations while Lorraine had been wiring tens of thousands offshore. The mask did not just slip, it shattered. Lorraine Vale Lara was no longer a philanthropist. She was just a common thief, exposed under the cold lights. I looked at Eddie. He nodded. He threw the main switch. The pavilion lit up. It was not a harsh floodlight, but a warm, golden light that glowed from within. It illuminated the massive, reclaimed beams. It shined through the slats, and it caught the hidden marks. The light hit the chisel-carved edges, and suddenly, the secret history was visible. Orchard Nov 27. 10:36 p.m. Helock, 588B. Belgravia, the proof. My pain was not hidden. It was part of the structure. It was what held the whole thing up. It was beautiful. I looked out at the crowd. I felt the cold air on my face. I checked my hands. They were not shaking. I checked my voice. I knew it was steady. I was not looking for their pity. I was not looking for their validation. I was just confirming that I was still standing. I stepped to the microphone one last time. The crowd went silent. "Tonight," I said, my voice ringing out. "The door is no longer closing behind me." For a second, there was absolute silence. Then, Eleanor Vance stood up and clapped. Mrs. Gable joined her, then Eddie, and then the entire plaza erupted. The sound was a wave, a physical force, the sound of a truth finally, fully heard. 2 uniformed police officers were walking calmly onto the stage, moving toward Lorraine. "Ma'am," one of them said, his voice low but firm, "we need you to come with us. You need to leave the plaza." She did not scream. She did not fight. She was empty. They gently but firmly escorted her off the stage, a ghost being removed from her own haunting. I looked for my father. He was still in the same spot, standing alone. He had not clapped. He was just watching me. He gave one, single, slow nod. It was not an apology. It was not asking for forgiveness. It was just an acknowledgement, the truth. He turned and walked away. I stepped down from the stage, away from the lights, away from the applause. I walked across the cold grass to my pavilion. People parted, letting me pass. I reached out and put my hand on the central beam. The light had made the wood warm. It was solid. It was real. I had built it. I took a deep breath, turned my back on the empty stage, and walked into the celebration, leaving the past behind me in the illuminated, honest wood. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Let me know where you are listening from in the comments below. I would love to connect with you and hear your thoughts. Please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button so more people can hear this story.